And welcome back to section 4, the final section in the inquiry process. Okay, so now we're up to the analysing and synthesising information, and this is your note taking. And again, we're just organising our information in a slightly different way. So the best thing to do, like you did with the other table, is to copy and paste those focus questions from the very first table we did into this section here. So you'll have background, that question on background events, individual or group, depending. Then you've got short-term impacts, long and continuity and significance. Okay, so you can do that straight away if you like. As soon as you've formulated those questions, you can copy and paste them into the source table, and you can copy and paste them straight in here because it just keeps you back on track with those questions all the time, organising it back to the questions, back to the questions, back to the questions. So what you're doing here, you're finding the information that you found in those sources, and anything, you might have found a few extra things as well. Let's say, for instance, if we think of my Dardanelles poster, and I've noticed there's some information about what was happening at the same time. It's on the same website. I've referenced it in my bibliography, in my SiteMaker. So there's no sort of reason why you can't add those in. You know, if you find some extra information around your source, pop it into your summary notes. Now, one of the key things is here. Let's say I had found, I don't know, out of my 5 sources, and maybe I'd found a couple of extra bits that I didn't put in my source table. Maybe 2 of those, 2 sources related back to background events. I would look at the information provided by those 2 sources, and in your own words, okay, combine the information and put it here in the summary notes. So remember, making a summary is not word for word copying and pasting it over. Making a summary is not putting as much information as you can about something. Making a summary is just about actually taking the key points out of your source that you need to help answer your focus question. That's that relevance to topic, relevance to question. This is where I do not want you guys to go, let's just throw a whole lot of somewhat relevant content and make this table huge. I want the information from the sources that are answering the question directly, okay, within that focus. Okay, that's in your own words. And again, not organised by sources, so not heading in dot point underneath the source or the text or whatever it is you're looking at. It is organised around your questions. And again, that's the biggest adjustment in thinking you have to think of. Okay, so evidence here. This is where you can copy and paste. So that then is if you've got any quotes that kind of you would use if you were sort of looking at writing something about this. Now, for this particular inquiry, once you've finished the booklet, you've finished the research aspect. Later on, you are going to kind of construct a source booklet and answer some questions on that, which you can do from these sources here, if you like. That is kind of what we would call a validation. So in usual practice, so next year, and if you do continue on with modern history, you'll find that the next step is to write an essay or written piece that takes your research and pulls it into a nice kind of report or essay style. And that's why you've got this section here, the evidence in the form of quotes. So what I want you guys to do, you're not writing an essay on this, okay? But let's get into the practice of finding some really nice quotes that are relevant to your topic that you could use if you were looking at an essay, because evidence is really key in most things that you write in essays, not just in history, but anything where you've got to justify your point. I know in English you must do that a lot. Definitely across all of the humanities, it's key. But I'm sure across other disciplines as well. If you're making a point, we want evidence. Okay, so this is really good practice, and we want it something that you could use in an essay. So that means we don't want to see a massive big chunk of text. I would just find something direct, fairly brief, okay, that really gets to the heart of the matter, okay? So I'm just going to write that there. I want you to connect to the heart of the matter, okay? And that's where you just take that nice quote. Now, if you've got a visual source, you can't use a quote. Maybe it will be a slogan from that. You don't have to put a quote from every single source that you've got either. What I want you to do is choose that one. If you can't choose more than one, that's why I've got a less there. You can choose two. But please don't go too far off track with this, okay? We're looking at quality. We're looking at relevance to your question. We're looking at good, reliable, detailed evidence, which doesn't always mean lots of words. Okay, so just sort of have a think about that. So again, and you do that process all the way down, individual and group. You know, you might only have one source. You might have 5 sources. It's the combination. I'm just going to write that there. It's the combined information that you're sticking here. Okay, from relevant sources, the ones that will help you answer the question. Now, you can also you might have stats as well. Stats is also, especially in economics, you're looking at an economic focus. Excuse me, stats, statistics are also what we would look at as evidence. Textual quotes, speeches, statistics, so casualties of battle, production figures, maybe there is in, things like evidence to do with, how many people were in a certain area, population. So have a sort of a think. It's not just a quote. Evidence can be anything you would use to answer that question that you're finding in your research. Again, if you have any issues with that one, please ask your teacher. But it is just that slightly different way of doing it. Once you get your head around this, it can be hopefully a little bit clearer. And when we do inquiry in history, it does always tend to look a little bit like this. So you're getting a little taste about, for the next year and into the future if that's the way you want to go. So let's kind of finish it off and flick down. Now we want you to reflect on your research. It is reflection, and also there is a checklist, of course, just those key things. Have you really given enough information to support the hypothesis, or have you given too much? Do you actually need to do a little bit more research, or do you need to now stop? Have you included ideas that might sort of challenge the hypothesis, and do you need to kind of have a look back at your notes again? Have you sort of had a think about your original inquiry question, or has that kind of gotten lost? Do you need to make a couple of changes before you submit to your original question? It's very common that once you go and do a bit of research, you might have to go back and change a few things about your original inquiry question, because sometimes we'll find out a little bit more. Did the research questions help? Do you need to check those? Do you need to change those a little bit and play with those? Have you used a good range of relevant, accurate, reliable primary and secondary sources? have you really looked at some different perspectives? You know, we might have a government one, we might have one from a person in society, we might have, you know, a participant in events, we might have something from a historian later on looking back. They're the kind of variety in perspective we need to look at. So it's almost like a little checkbox, and, you know, use it. You know, it's not just there to make it look good. There's checkboxes there. We expect you to use those. Whoops, sorry about that. Okay, so let's now go down here. Now I have put this template here. If by some chance you would like to have a look at the different styles and you would like to reference like that, I don't recommend it. I recommend SiteMaker. Okay. And you can, if you are having trouble getting that going, or you're new this year and you need to get that set up, you would go to the library to sort that out. If that's not something you're wanting to do and you want to take this way where you are constructing it, what you're doing is finding the relevant type, and there's all kinds in this template: books, interviews, that might be something you might find on YouTube. You know, newspaper articles, there might be a documentary, because that's quite fine as well. And they've all got examples you can use. Now, if you're going to use these, I would like you to delete the example, okay, and just put your reference in, because it gets a bit confusing otherwise. And then delete the areas that you're not using, okay, if you're going to use that. SiteMaker, much better, easy to get your full 3 marks. Definitely what we would recommend. You know, referencing is key. It's not something you guys always think of, but again, down the track, when you're looking at upper school, even beyond that, when you're looking at university level, TAFE level, it's really important that you reference well. You know, URL doth not a reference make. It needs to be done in APA format, which is the All Saints format. For it to really be a good reference. So please make sure that finishing touch that you were doing that. Okay, last but certainly not least, I flick down to some links to get you started. So there's just a few things there. Sometimes these are great here, these LibGuides. I'll just go and show you where that is. The Wesley College, they've popped one up. So they've got some really great, you know, sort of links to start with. We have our, what we call our Pathfinder in our library, and I definitely start off there. But also having a look at others' libraries are great. And this is a few sort of things that you can look at just to get you started. Absolutely jumping points. You would be definitely looking at a wide range. And you know what? You've got a research trolley sitting in the library. Even if you're not booked to go into the library, there is a trolley in there where the librarians have collected all of the resources available in the library and put them on a trolley for you to have a look at. Okay, so that is the last lecture. If you need to go back over anything, please feel free to do so. Please feel free to come and to go and see your teacher. If you would also like to ask me personally about anything that you've heard in the lecture, or a curly question that you would like to ask me, that's fine. You know where to find me. I'm in the Haas office, and you can flick me an email at any point. So thanks for putting up with my voice. It's not always a great thing to listen to, but hopefully this kind of lecture style will be useful. And I encourage you to go back and replay sections that you think you might need, so that you get a really good understanding and to get those extra tips and tricks. Thanks for listening, and good luck with your inquiry.